We've lost another staff member. I'm losing my ability to count them on my fingers and toes at this point for Archwell. Another one bites the dust, and a lot of questions surrounding the future of American Riviera Orchard. So we've got a lot to discuss today.
You're right. Do you need to borrow any body parts to count up the members of staff that we've lost, Kinsey? I'll donate a few because there have been
I won't.
so many. Is it because I saw a bit of reaction? I mean, if anyone wants to know the story, this is Josh Kettler, and this was the very grandly titled Chief of Staff. And this was the man that was apparently going to guide Harry through his next phase. As it turned out, he was only going to guide Harry through the next 3 months because that's how long he lasted in his job. So as you rightly say, another staff member, a much heralded staff member that has been lost to the Sussexes. Firstly, what's your reaction, Kinsey, and why do you think that this person might have left?
Well, People magazine is reporting that the Duke and Duchess's chief of staff left his position after 3 months, but he was hired on a trial basis. And the decision to part ways was mutual, with both sides agreeing it wasn't the right fit. So I always turn to People magazine. I feel like they are the new Omid Scobie. Harry and Meghan work very closely with them, are featured on the cover of their magazines, and we get a lot of insight into what's going on from Harry and Meghan's perspective from People magazine, because they're giving people permission to talk to them on their behalf. But this is coming just a month after Dominic Reed, the CEO who led Invictus Games from its creation, stepped down as well when he said it's time for someone new to take this vital movement forward into the second decade. He resigned, I would say, almost hours after Prince Harry accepted the Pat Tillman Award on national television, and I don't think that was a coincidence. So this isn't a great look for the Sussexes. Newsweek points out that all of the Sussexes staff departures tend to draw attention because of that very wild December 2018 article out of the Sunday Times, which reported that Meghan Markle was a difficult boss. That's really where she got the nickname Duchess Difficult. And this was after Meghan had lost her second close aide, Samantha Cohen, the one that we found out called Harry and Meghan teenagers. Working with them was like working with a bunch of teenagers. But a pretty critical headline even coming from Newsweek about the most recent departure. It says Prince Harry staff departure echoes major crisis.
And of course, we alluded to this last week, didn't we? These bullying allegations from when Meghan was in Buckingham Palace, part of the royal family herself. So this does all reinforce this idea that they are an absolute nightmare. And some of their supporters online are saying, as you have rightly said, that it's a mutual decision. Some people have actually said as well, why do they need a chief of staff? I mean, did this person quit just out of sheer boredom? Because they don't really do anything that warrants a job for someone who is very corporate, for someone who took this role hopefully wanting to get their teeth into it, that actually there isn't much for them to be getting on with because they don't really do anything.
Well, this is their second international tour this year, so I would bet. I mean, they're obviously trying to do some. They're trying to fly. So, I think that there is an argument that they are trying to create something around these international tours.
Now, I've got to talk. I don't know. Did you see the spat online between Richard Eden, who broke this story, and Chris Shipp, the royal correspondent from ITV? Because there's been a little bit of a spat between them, and it's quite interesting because Richard Eden pointed out that ITV News has been told the departure was a mutual decision. And Richard Eden retweeted Chris Shipp saying, ITV News has been told, what a joke. It would have been more honest if you'd attributed that to a spokesman for the Sussexes. And I revealed this on Mail Online last night. Chris Shipp then said, sorry, I thought that the story originated in People, but if I'm wrong, then please accept my apology. So it does seem like, going back to your theory, and very good of Chris Shipp as well to then attribute the story to Richard Eden. But going back to your theory, it does seem then that when Richard Eden ran the story, there wasn't any reaction, and then People managed to get some reaction from Harry and Meghan, which then became a mutual decision. But certainly in the first story that Richard Eden wrote, it wasn't by mutual decision. This person had quit.
Yes, the People magazine story went up 12 hours ago. So Richard Eden, without a doubt, was the first to report this, because his story happened, I'd almost say 20 hours ago. So Richard Eden was the first to report, and then Harry and Meghan damage control, their damage control situation right now is no longer Omid Scobie and his Twitter account. It's working closely with People magazine. We saw this it was their exclusive cover last week about how Meghan supports Harry 100%, but she wishes he could go and get rid of these lawsuits, be happy and live in the moment and forget about the lawsuits. And a source, a former employee of Archewell, told People magazine she wants him to be free of all of this, but she also knows that because of everything he's been through and his love for her and the children, he can't. She wants him to live in a world where he is not burdened by this.
So people are getting a lot of stuff
why,
from them, aren't they?
why is a former staff member of Archewell, notorious for signing NDAs? I've talked to Valentine Lowe about this extensively, about how these people are petrified to talk after.
Assalamu alaikum, live from Gaza. Want to acknowledge and thank
after signing NDAs, after working at the palace, after working for Harry and Meghan. Why is a former staff member talking to People magazine about Meghan being the one that wants to move forward and Prince Harry holding her back? You don't do that unless you've been told you're not going to be sued. You don't do that unless you have permission to talk to People magazine by the Sussexes.
And in your experience in royal reporting, is that quite usual? Because Richard Eden is saying, I went to them with this story, didn't hear a thing, waited to run it, and didn't get any response from them. But then obviously they then wanted to control the narrative through this preferred publication. Is that usual for them? Is it usual for them to say, well, actually, we're not going to give this to the publication that's breaking the story. We'll give it to a preferred publication instead?
Yes, I think that they were trying to scoop Richard Eden by going to People magazine. I'm sure that was the likely the original plan. That's what they typically do when they found out that Dan Wooten was about to break Megxit. They asked him not to. They asked him to hold off on it, and then tried to figure out a way that they could get it out before he could. So that is typically how they operate.
And is that sour grapes, or is it controlling the narrative? Is it, well, we're not going to give it to you, we'll give it to someone that we like? Or is it perhaps wise on their part because then they have some control over what's being said?
Well, look, Josh Kettler was praised for being instrumental in the Sussexes' success when it came to the Nigeria tour. So it's not a great look for him to be departing within days of the Colombia tour. And I'm sure that those are some of the headlines that they wanted to avoid. But this is also the 18th employee that we know of that they've lost. That's not housekeepers, that's not nannies, this is just under the Archewell umbrella that we know of since 2018, and that's a pretty dramatic number. And they know as that number gets higher, that it gives credibility to the stories about Meghan Markle being difficult to work for. Also, Prince Harry in Spare, I don't think he realizes that he gave credibility to that story when he wrote, nerves were shattered, people were sniping in such a climate, there was no such thing as constructive criticism. And he says that all the feedback that him and Meghan gave to employees was considered an affront, an insult. And more than one staff member slumped over their desk and cried. And he talks about how Prince William blamed one person for that toxic environment, and that was Meghan. So I think that they're trying to avoid that narrative continuing, but they've lost their job at Spotify. Everybody's questioning what's going on with American Riviera Orchard. It does seem like at the end of the day, these two people don't get along very well, and have a difficult time working with others.
And have a difficult time working at all, it seems, because, of course, they were called massively lazy when it came to Spotify and the like, producing content. And at what point, if you're them, do you start to question, is it us? I mean, would it be employee number 17 that you've lost? Employee number 16? Employee number 15? At what point do you start saying, maybe it is us? And it's a really, it's a true observation that you make about this tour to Colombia. I mean, is it related? Is this staff member, as you say, highly respected? Is it perhaps some conflict about this Colombia tour and the way it's perceived to the public? Because a lot of people, us included, have made the point that how can you, on the one hand, be kicking up this huge stink about security, but then go to one of the most dangerous countries in the world? Perhaps from a PR perspective, he felt that his job was untenable.
Well, and to answer your question, I think that they have to start looking in the mirror at this point in time, because the way Prince Harry positions it is that Meghan wasn't the problem. It was the staff at the palace was the problem. Very much so. He says that things are outdated there. There's the gray suits working behind their backs, that it wasn't Meghan at Kensington Palace. But they've lost at least 9 employees since moving to California. And one of the quotes that Richard Eden got was a former employee telling him, what may be most telling is that the entire time I worked there, I don't think I heard a single current or former employee on their staff say that they would take the job again if given the chance. And what that tells you is these are not great bosses, and attitude reflects leadership. And so I do believe that they have to be looking back at least now and saying, okay, 18 in general, maybe people were fussy at the palace. We'll give them that. But you've lost half of them since you've been here. So At what point do you look in the mirror and say, I might be the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. At what point do you say we must be toxic when it comes to people working for us? But also, can you imagine the audacity of palace staff members that may have been there for years, that were assigned to Meghan and Harry to help that transition, and Meghan gives them feedback? Sorry, I know that you may have worked in palace circles, and you may be one of the grey suits that has worked here for the last 30 years, and you've contributed to the success of our most successful and longest reigning monarch of all time, Queen Elizabeth II. But I'm going to give you some feedback about what I want. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I work on a cable news show. I'm not a news show. I work on a cable drama. I work on a scripted cable show. I'm smarter than you. I mean, there were very nasty stories from the beginning that she told one of Prince Harry's employees, or I shouldn't say Prince Harry because he was still in the fold. It was somebody that worked for Prince William, the Princess of Wales, Kate, and Prince Harry. She said, I'm going to be your boss one day, like in a threatening way. So I believe that was in Tom Bower's book. But it's obviously they have an issue getting along with people. They think they're always right, and they have a real problem taking direction, because I don't know who would advise them that going on this trip to Colombia is a good idea. I think they will likely be able to manage it, and the video and the pictures will come out glossy and beautiful, and they will consider it a win. But I also believe that it's not going to change people's perspective of them, and they are still considered the butt of the joke in the United States. We just had Joe Rogan on the front of the Daily Mail yesterday, tearing into them on a Netflix special, their bosses. They also work for Netflix. So they're going to continue to be the butt of the joke, no matter how many pretty pictures come out of Colombia or Nigeria.
And you rightly alluded to this People story, saying apparently from a member of staff who has been, had the gag removed from their mouth, that Meghan wants this litigation to stop. Is that contributing to them being the butt of the joke? The fact that they just, or Harry particularly, just can't leave it alone and just keeps going and going and going? Because it is, a lot of people, I think, if this is true, Meghan's got a point. Just enjoy your life. Get on with it. It's fine. You know, this vendetta that you have against the tabloids is fueling people getting frustrated with you, but also making a fool of yourself.
I think that this is an attempt by Meghan to look like the carefree, joyful, likable girl, because she's about to launch a lifestyle brand and a cooking show, and their brand is so toxic and negative. They're always, whether Meghan's on CBS talking about her mental health struggles, or Meghan is on Oprah Winfrey, the tone is always negative. She is considered a heavy presence and a disruptive presence. By allowing somebody, a former employee of Archwell, to talk to People magazine, saying that she wants Harry to pull back and she's not the one behind instigating his pursuit of all of this litigation, it takes, I think the objective is to take some of the heat off of her, so that she doesn't look so disruptive, so that she can look like, oh, I'm lost in it too. I wish he'd stop. I wish we could focus on the future. I think that's the objective.
I'm so relaxed. I don't mind about these things because I'm not a control freak. I'm not a control freak. I'm just very, very, very relaxed. The tiara. What tiara? I didn't want a tiara. You know what? Someone didn't call me a duchess and I hit the roof. That's not true. Oh, I don't mind what people call me. Yeah, that's the narrative. She's trying to push, right?
Yeah, I definitely think she wants to be seen as friendly. Well, exactly, yeah, because one of the quotes that was given to maybe Us Weekly about her brand new Netflix show was they wanted her to look attainable, and that is what I think that some of these stories we're seeing planted in some of these publications is Meghan is nice, Meghan is friendly, Meghan makes jam. I mean, what the heck was the jam thing? I mean, it came out of nowhere. They're trying to make her a more likable character, and by distancing her from Harry's litigation, I think it almost makes him look over the top and paranoid, but maybe that is the goal. Maybe that's the goal, because she needs people to rally around her inevitably.
Well, if this has come from her, then she's clearly quite willing to throw him under the bus so that therefore she looks good instead. You know, well, I don't want my cookery show to fail. Well, rather than support my husband, I'll just throw him under the bus completely, make out that he's paranoid and that he shouldn't be doing this at all. Because it is an art. I mean, this is quite interesting that, you know, when you look at the really successful cookery shows, lifestyle shows that people have had that are successful. Look at someone like Nigella. I mean, she comes from wealth and privilege, but she manages to bridge the gap where people are able to relate to her and enjoy what she's offering. The problem is anyone going to believe Meghan when she said, well, you know, look at this lovely meal and I've made it for all my friends and come in, staff members, why don't you eat some of this? Because people are going to think, well, do you have that many friends that you've not ditched? You're certainly not going to be cooking a dinner party for your family because you've ditched all of those. And, you know, staff members, not going to be very many of those either. And so it's going to spoil the illusion of a homely cookery show, right?
I think so. And I don't know whether she'll include the children, but I almost feel like that is an easy out and a great distraction, even if it's just the back of the kids in the kitchen while she's making something at the
They'll hire
a
some.
counter.
They'll hire a couple. Get out an agency, hire a couple. It'll be fine. You know, stick a slightly red wig on a child from an agency, and we can all just like coo and ah over them. It will be lovely.
But I do think it's an impossible task to try to execute a rebrand at the same time that you're trying to shove something down somebody's throat. So, you know, to tell us all, you know, leading up to this show, we believe it's premiering at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, along with the launch of American Riviera Orchard, to tell us that she's likable, she's nice, you want to make the same muffins that she makes. To try to do this all at the same time, get us to turn on her show, get us to buy her product, but also get us to buy this garbage narrative that they're trying to sell us now, which is that she is just carefree, happy-go-lucky California girl, no drama. They're trying to sell too much too soon.
Yeah, no drama.
You know, they've had 4 years to figure this out, and they haven't.
Here you go. Why don't you cook something for your dad? You know, the poor man who's probably hasn't seen a good meal from a family member like her for a long, long time. Now, you mentioned being carefree and happy and all these sorts of things. And this, of course, this Colombia visit. Why? We still don't know. But interesting piece in the Telegraph this week where some people are discussing, residents in Colombia are saying, now, they've been invited by the left-wing government, and the left-wing government has been dogged by corruption scandals since elected the last couple of years ago, in the last couple of years. So a lot of commentators are saying, well, hang on, this is the perfect cover-up. Get the Duke and Duchess over to Colombia, big glamorous visit, all of the photographs and all the glossiness that you talk about. This is the perfect way to gloss over all of the corruption and all of the scandals that this government has been involved in. So are Harry and Meghan actually being used? They think they're the ones in control with this visit, but in actual fact, they're being used by the left-wing Colombian government.
I don't think that they're being used. I think that it's mutually beneficial. Harry and Meghan get the pictures. I mean, Harry and Meghan are having to leave not only my country, but your country to be seen as leaders. Otherwise, they're loathed or they're jokes. So what they get out of the Colombia trip, People magazine is going to print glowing stories of them, glossy pictures of Meghan in very expensive, beautiful outfits. And they're going to be standing there with other world leaders, which they're hoping that you are who you associate with, and people will assume that they're in the same kind of lane that some of these world leaders are. And Colombia gets a distraction from the corruption happening in the government. I think it's mutually beneficial. You know, maybe you are who you associate with and they're all a little corrupt. Enjoy each other.
Yeah, have fun. But I think that's where the role of journalists is really important, actually. The journalists don't get seduced by all of this, the glossy pictures and all of these things, and that they still discuss, hey, this isn't the perfect country. I mean, Colombia is still described by the US government as level 3 or an orange risk when it comes to terror and safety. Reconsider travel due to crime and terrorism is what the US government says. The UK government says terrorists are very likely to carry out attacks in Colombia. There's a risk of kidnapping by armed groups, and the country is seriously afflicted by conflict and cocaine turf wars. And so, again, I mean, I know we've made this point, but such a bizarre place to visit when you are going on about your own security. I mean, the UK and the US governments are saying to people, this is a place you've got to be very, very careful. Meghan and Harry suddenly not worried about those concerns. Very
yeah,
odd.
I just think that they're going where they're invited, and
just anywhere.
They're not being invited to places that have their what together.
Anywhere. Like, send them a message, Kinsey. Maybe they'll come to one of ours. I don't think we're on their Christmas card list somehow.
No, I don't want to deal with them anyway.
We're in the Thomas Markle file, most definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, now shall we talk about the about American Riviera Orchard and what is actually happening, because apparently now there are going to be some delays. We've seen the jam, we've seen the dog biscuits, but now there is an issue regarding this trademark. What's that all about?
So it's going to cost, well, according to People magazine, it's been taken care of, but there were some irregularities with trademark submission because she wants this brand to be international. And it cost them approximately $11,000 to fix these errors. But People says that American Riviera Orchard received notices of irregularity around clarifications for goods and services, as well as reclassification of certain products. I believe I saw yoga mats being one of those products that was mentioned. Now, People insists that such inquiries are typical while pursuing international applications due to the differences between international and U.S. standards. And they say all fees and such notices have been paid and no further action is required. And they do say that Megan's American Riviera Orchard is on track to launch later this year. But these are costly mistakes. And apparently it's just something that might happen along the way. But I think some interesting things have come out of the paperwork that we've seen filed. I don't think it's a rosé. I didn't see anything in the trademark application for a rosé. I thought that was interesting.
You've been through the trademark application. You're amazing. I love that you've been through the trademark.
And then another...
You've got the business idea. Now, give it the right address.
Another thing that I don't believe, she has filed this application to have standalone stores. I don't know if it's a different type of application. I'd have to confirm, but I don't think she will try to have a store. I think she'll try to do pop-ups. She strikes me as somebody that wants to like do like hyped little American Riviera Orchard pop-ups where she wants to create a scene. Sending out these jams 4 months ago and us not getting anything, obviously her mindset is to build some sort of hype. So I think that there will be standalone American Riviera Orchard pop-up shops. I don't believe that there's rosé. Maybe that's something that's going to happen in the future. But, I think that she is keen to launch this with her Netflix show. It's going to be an all-out blitz. So if you are already feeling overwhelmed with Harry and Meghan news lately, I hate to tell you that Christmas time, it's going to be miserable.
Well, there's got to be something. All they've produced is jam and dog biscuits. And as you say, a yoga mat, which are, by the way, 3 really weird products to have side by side. Like, we're just going to go online. But what are they, Amazon? I'm just going to go on and buy a yoga mat and some, I remember I think originally they were talking about tea towels as well and dog biscuits and jam. What bizarre products. And all they have produced so far, for sure, is this jam and a packet of dog biscuits, and that's it.
That you can't buy. That you can't buy at all.
How long will it take them to produce something? And remember, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about how there doesn't seem to be. People have been in touch with manufacturers around the LA area, and no one's been commissioned to try and start making anything. And so,
they will likely do that in China. We're talking yoga mats, and we're talking, they're just going to slap a logo on things that already exist. That's probably especially if they're just going to utilize Netflix to really navigate some of this stuff, which is...
I feel a China visit coming on. Another regime perhaps isn't well known for looking after this. They'll still go to China, do the factory deal, a few jars of jam that they stick their labels on, and then, come home after a few pictures.
I just want to know what percentage Meghan's going to say she is with the Colombian people. Like how is she going to say that she's directly related to somebody within the room there?
It's true. She's Colombian. This week she's Colombian. She's been Maltese. She's been Nigerian. So you're right. There hasn't been Colombia yet. So that is probably the next one. Apparently, this article as well regarding the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining, and friendship, which is the products we're going to be getting, they're now saying that it seems likely to be pushed back into 2025. And so goodness knows when we'll actually get any kind of product. Goodness knows what those products will be. And goodness knows whether it will be some tap that's probably made in China, like you say, where I'm quite sure. And they're going to have to be careful, by the way, if they manufacture in a country like that, because if they are the ones banging on about, wanting to be kind and wanting to not have any kind of human rights violations and all these sorts of things.
They don't ever do that. They say one thing and they do another.
Exactly.
So that they're not going to all about that at all. They don't care.
They don't care. You're right. They don't care. They don't care. But we care. And is that just about it for another week, isn't it? So we've had a lot to dissect this week. Now, what do people need to do?
We'll have even more next week after the Colombia trip. Oh my God. All of the outfits, all of the photos. We'll have so much.
It's going to be a Colombia special. And let's hope that Prince Harry doesn't indulge in some of the more recreational sides of Colombia, which we know he's fond of.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Otherwise, he may be very well awake for the flight. So as always, what would people need to do?
Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend.
Yes, thank you. That's it from us. Thanks, Kinsey. Nice to see you. See you next time.
Hello and welcome to the Royal Record here on GB News. I'm Cameron Walker, GB News' royal correspondent.
And I'm Sfan Anand, royal editor of gbnews.com.
We have a lot coming up for you on today's show. First of all, we've got Prince Harry and Meghan. Their chief of staff has quit after just 3 months in the role.
And we'll be looking at why Prince Harry has decided not to attend his uncle's funeral amid security issues.
And the royals have been busy with the Olympics. Princess Anne, Duchess of Edinburgh, have been across in Paris cheering on Team GB. And we've got some special messages from both the King, Queen and the Prince and Princess of Wales.
And following that video from Kate and William, we'll be looking at whether it sparked the latest instalment of what's being dubbed Beard Wars.
I think it looks quite good with the beard, but Sfar disagrees. We'll be discussing that later. Let's go.
Cameron, I understand that Prince Harry is set to miss Lord Fellowes' funeral because of many challenges around a trip to the UK. Some of them he's openly discussed about his fears with returning to the UK because of security issues. We know he doesn't have the level of security that he feels comfortable with. And then another challenge is the fact it could set up an awkward reunion with Prince William, who is likely to attend the event. We saw Harry take a similar stance with the Duke of Westminster's wedding in June, where Prince William was an usher And despite being quite close to the Duke of Westminster, Harry also didn't attend that event. So there's a lot to unpack there as to all the challenges that Harry's facing now in attending these family events in the UK.
Yeah, and I think it's odd in a sense because this is the second family member, or at least close person who Harry is close with, that he's missed quite an important event. With the Duke of Westminster's case, I understand that Prince Harry had a phone call with the Duke of Westminster beforehand, and they kind of mutually agreed for the benefit of everybody. It was probably not great, but he attended because then the spotlight would be on him and William's rift. This time, as you say, we understand one of the key reasons is for not attending Lord Fellowes' funeral is security. Lord Fellowes is is Lady Jane Fellowes' husband, which is Princess Diana's older sister. So very close to the Spencer family. Lord Fellowes also former private secretary to Queen Elizabeth II. And we know Harry in particular is very close to the Spencer side of the family. We saw Lady Jane and his brother and her brother Earl Spencer support Prince Harry in the Invictus Games 10th anniversary at St Paul's Cathedral. And we also know that Prince Harry has to give the Home Office 28 days notice before he returns to the UK in order to get any police protection. Because I think a lot of people forget that he does get some police protection when he comes to the UK, but it's not automatic protection and he has to give a lot of notice. But for a situation like a funeral of a close relative, that's quite difficult because you obviously don't know when somebody's going to die. And usually a funeral takes place far less than 28 days after the death. So he's in a little bit of a predicament there. What's he going to do for future funerals, which he may be sadly have to attend?
Yeah. And as you mentioned, he is close to that side of his family. They were the Spencers were the only set of family that chose to attend his Invictus anniversary event at St Paul's Cathedral. That was the last time he was in the UK. I think with Harry, there's obviously the security issues are at the forefront of his mind. But if the rift with William isn't close to being healed, it will continue to be a problem for both Harry and William as to when they do have to come together for these family events, funerals, and also other things.
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room that is not being mentioned by either side is the fact that Harry and William not on speaking terms. I think the caveat to that is Lord Fellowes' funeral, we don't have a date for it. They're keeping it very private. It is going to be a private family event. But even then, the two of them appear to are not going to be in the same room together. Now, sources close to Harry perhaps indicate security as a major factor, as Harry has indicated on the record in himself in the past as to why he won't return to the UK. But again, it does come back to any event Prince Harry returns to. Will he see the King? Will he see Prince William? And it's the same family story over and over again, whatever Prince Harry does when he comes back to the UK. And perhaps he's dug a little bit of a hole for himself here. Clearly, Prince Harry feels hurt by his family. He feels hurt that his security was downgraded. He feels he's been hard done by. But it's really tricky to see how the situation resolves, particularly around security, until we get this decision by the Court of Appeal. Because at the moment, we are waiting for that decision whether or not they will change the security if it was unlawful.
Yeah, and something you touched on there about Harry, whenever he comes to the UK, there is this big story around will he see his family or won't he? And Harry himself has felt the need to clarify that. In May, when he returned, he issued a statement saying that he would not be seeing King Charles due to a schedule clash and because the King's diary was too full. So Harry himself is aware that when he comes back to the UK, there is a huge amount of interest as to what his relationships are with his family and will he be seeing any of them.
And again, he did return in March when Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles had cancer. He dropped everything and flew across to the UK to see his father, albeit for 40 minutes or so. But as far as we're aware, there wasn't 28 days notice for that. So it is possible for him to return to the United Kingdom if he really, really wants to.
Yeah. And we've spoken about the rift he has with William at the moment. And William actually released a video with Kate to commemorate the success of Team GB. But a little nugget in the video is that William was sporting a beard, a brand new beard.
Let's take a look at the video first.
From all of us watching at home, congratulations to Team GB.
Well done on all you've achieved. You've been an inspiration to us all. Kung ganito kataas ang gastusin, alin ang tatanggalin mo para makapag-budget?
Prince William sporting his new facial hair there. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of that a little bit later on, but the King also delivered a message to congratulate Teams GB, hailing them an inspiration. I'll just read his message very briefly. He said, "My wife joins me in sending our warmest congratulations to the competitors and their support teams for Team GB and across the whole Commonwealth for their many outstanding successes at the Olympic Games in Paris. Your achievements across so many disciplines were forged from that invaluable combination of raw talent, true grit, and hard toil over many years, burnished these past weeks by sportsmanship and team spirit in the finest tradition of the Games. To those who missed out on the greatest prizes, you have most certainly not fallen short in the pride that you too have generated for your nations. As we thank France for hosting such a wonderful tournament and look to the Paralympics ahead, I can only say that you have all been an inspiration." We also had Princess Anne go to Paris for the Olympics. She is the president of the British Olympic Association. She saw rugby 7, swimming, equestrian, rowing, sailing, and windsurfing. Duchess of Edinburgh also was spotted congratulating Team GB in Paris. She is patron, and she also released a message saying, "As patron of Great Britain hockey and British cycling, it has been a wonderful few days in Paris, watching so many inspiring sporting moments at the Olympics. Congratulations to everyone at Team GB. It was a thrill to see you compete. You have done us proud." Princess Anne, Duchess of Edinburgh, both went to Paris. King, Queen, Prince and Princess of Wales did not.
Yeah, I think it would have been difficult for Kate to go. It would have obviously been the furthest that she's travelled since being diagnosed with cancer, and we haven't seen Kate do any international engagement since. It's unclear why William didn't go. I mean, he was a strong supporter of England's football team in the Euros, but obviously that was part of his role as the president of the Football Association. But
Yeah.
I think with those messages and with the appearances of both the Duchess of Edinburgh and Princess Anne, we did see a huge amount of support for the athletes in Team GB from the royal family. And there was also a really nice moment, a really nice message from Princess Eugenie. She did an Instagram post talking about her love for the Olympics. She attended the Olympics in London in 2012. And she also spoke about one of the highlights of that was seeing Zara Tindall, her cousin, compete at the Olympic Games. So we saw a lovely exchange between those two cousins as well, and just great wider backing from the royal family.
Yeah, and I think it shows that the minor royals, I hate that phrase, but I'm gonna say it, the minor royals were supporting their king in supporting Team GB actually in Paris. And also I think Prince William can't be expected to do everything. I think he is spinning a lot of plates as well as supporting his wife who is going through cancer treatment. So perhaps that is why. But we did get, as we mentioned, and as we just saw, that very special video message from William and Catherine. But I think the main distraction from that video for everybody was his facial hair, which I think he looks quite good with it.
Yeah,
if he keeps it in September.
You're a fan, aren't you?
Yeah, and so is a lot of people online by the looks of it. It's makes him look a bit more chiseled. Let's see. You're not so keen.
The jury's still out. Yeah. Let's see if he keeps it in September, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time he's had a beard. I think he had one in 2008. The military have now relaxed their rules, saying that soldiers can now have beards. And obviously, relatives in the past of Prince William's, his grandfather in particular, great grandfather, sported beards as well. When I say grandfather, I don't mean grandfather. I mean great grandfather, great great grandfather. They've all had beards, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we briefly touched on it earlier, but William's beard actually created the latest installment of what people have dubbed the Beard Wars. This goes back to Prince Harry writing in Spare that William was furious that he had chose to keep his beard for his wedding to Meghan in 2018. Prince Harry wrote in Spare, "When I informed William that his opinion didn't really matter since I'd already gone to Granny and got the green light, he became livid. He raised his voice. He added that William accused Harry of putting their grandmother in an uncomfortable position, saying she had no choice but to say yes." So this is because Harry felt so strongly about his beard and the fact that he didn't want to shave it off for the wedding, that he spoke to the late Queen and asked for permission to keep it. Prince Harry has also referred to his beard in spare as his security blanket.
Aww.
So it's something that Prince Harry obviously feels really passionate about. And now it looks like William's briefly joined him with also sporting a beard.
Yeah, quite possibly. I think it'll be interesting to see if this was just a relaxed Prince William on holiday, can't be bothered to shave, did a video last minute because he had to for the Olympics, and he'll shave it off come September when he's back on full-time public duties. Or he has decided to grow it and maybe he'll keep it. So let's see, watch this space. When Prince William next does a public engagement, which will probably be in a few weeks' time in September when the children are back in school, we will keep a close eye on whether or not he keeps his facial hair. We're delighted to be joined now by Richard Fitzwilliams, royal commentator. Welcome to the Royal Record podcast, Richard. First of all, we've heard this week that Prince Harry and Meghan have lost their chief of staff. This seems to be the latest in a long line of exits since Harry and Meghan's marriage in 2018.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, it's been calculated that getting on for 20 people have left their employ in one way or another. And also this issue brings up, and I think it will be something that nobody's forgotten, the allegations, and that is the bullying allegations against Meghan, which were investigated by Buckingham Palace. But of course, this wasn't made public, and those involved couldn't because of non-disclosure agreements. So the timing of this is odd. I mean, People magazine, which has replaced David Scobie, it's a sort of unofficial voice of the Sussexes, has said that it's by a mutual consent, but he was only there for 3 months, and it does very, very strongly underline the fact that they are obviously very difficult to work for or to please. And going back some years, this narrative, it's not something that will go away. Equally, there are no facts to back up, that we know, to back up any specific disagreement between him and them. We probably will never hear of it. It's just a feeling that they are difficult to live with.
Of course, Meghan has always denied the bullying allegations made against her, as has her lawyers. But you're right, there does seem to be this consistent staff turnover, right? And I suppose the next question would be, is this the fact that A, as you suggest, they could be difficult to work with, but B, there doesn't seem to be any clear direction at the moment as to where the Sussexes are going with their professional work?
Well, now, this is something that I think we're all looking for, possibly, and this hasn't come up, but obviously with Kamala Harris now being the presidential nominee, this again could open the possibility, and there's always been flagged up, of Meghan, who has a certain activist streak, which we all know of, going into politics. But we don't know that that is on the horizon, but it certainly could be. Then, of course, I detect with these quasi-royal tours, I mean, there was Jamaica fleetingly in January. Then there was admittedly very successful from their point of view. I think the trip to Nigeria, Meghan discovering the fact she was 43% Nigerian, and the fact that Nigeria just joined Invictus and perhaps intended to, or was hosting, or hoping to host in the future. That was the excuse for that. This one to Colombia, I mean, very, very clearly this is happening, and I think that this is quite consistent. It's happening at a time when, unfortunately, owing to the fact that King Charles and the Princess of Wales are fighting cancer, we're not seeing the use of British soft power, which is absolutely unique, and that is the royal trip abroad, which is so helpful and which is absolutely sought after. We know King Charles, of course, is with Queen Camilla attending Chatham and then going to Australia. But the original tour of the Antipodes, of course, won't occur. And again, all of this is subject to doctors' advice. And I think that the Sussexes are taking that as part of a strategy which will lead to these quasi-world tours possibly elsewhere.
Richard, so just bringing it back to the Colombia tour, which we know is going to happen this month, the timing of the departure is very strange, isn't it, of the chief of staff? He was there on the Nigeria tour with them. He also accompanied Harry back to the UK in May, and it will create unwanted headlines for the Sussexes just before they embark on this tour.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'd say it's a very clear vote of no confidence in them. And I think it's pretty public, because the least they could have done, if they're not compatible, is to have waited until the tour was over. Absolutely.
So it looks like, perhaps, let's say, publications favourable to the Sussexes have suggested, or sources close to the Sussexes have suggested, that the departure of Josh Kettler was mutual, that he was only ever hired on a trial basis, and that he just wasn't the right fit. What do you make of that kind of briefing from those close to the Sussexes?
Well, I think it very clearly wasn't the right fit, because obviously he and they did not get on. Now, why, we'll never be told, I suspect. But as you say, I mean, that he leaves just before an important tour, because they haven't established this series of Worldwild tours to be not consistently yet. I suspect that this is what is coming. So clearly it is somewhat of a blow, and it does bring back again the memory of the allegations that Meghan was always denied about bullying when they were senior working royals, and that isn't pleasant. And it, again, the way they handle things, I mean, the reports that American Riviera Orchard is having problems with the trademark for internationally, and also the fact that the security issues keep coming up.
And Richard, you mentioned there about security issues, and we know now that Prince Harry is very unlikely to travel back to the UK for his uncle Lord Fellowes' funeral. Security issues has been the reason that's being put out there. He spoke recently of fearing of being attacked whilst he was in the UK, and we know he's not comfortable with the level of security that he's got in the UK. Do you foresee that this is going to be an obstacle that Harry will face now, and he may really step away from the UK and not return unless it's for a major event?
This is a very, very curious issue, because when the Sussexes stepped back only to step down as senior working royals, they knew they would lose automatic police protection. Harry believes this was a wrong decision and that it was wrongly made. At his suit against the Home Office, I mean, he couldn't pay. He offered to pay for security. He couldn't have a two-tier form of police protection, because the rich could pay and those others not. I mean, that he was always going to lose that. What is clearly emerging is that he believes that Britain is dangerous. Now, that appears hypocritical when you look at, say, security in Nigeria, if it was arranged by the defense minister, or the security in Colombia, even if the vice president is arranging it. The fact simply are that both countries are considered somewhat dangerous, certainly parts of them. But I suspect that Harry's taking this case, which he lost at the High Court, about getting police protection to the Court of Appeal. I suspect that his view of it will have been, of security fears, will have been heightened by the recent riots here. We've learned from people, apparently, that it is said, or reported, that he believes that one of the reasons for the dreadful breach between him and King Charles appears to be that, if we believe this, that he believes that King Charles has the power to override Ravik, makes these decisions, like the Home Office, and reinstate their police protection. But the curiosity, I mean, when he was last here, not only did he not, as we know, see his father, but also reportedly was offered a berth in a palace and chose a hotel. So it doesn't make that much sense. But what does very clearly is he does believe there's a threat. We know he's haunted by what happened to his mother, and we know on this particular issue, his taking it further. So the Court of Appeal, he wants to be one of the other VIP categories. And in my opinion, if he was certainly post the right, because they are conscious of a right-wing extremist threat, it would at least be a gesture, so far as the British establishment is concerned, if he was given the security that he feels he ought to have. Would he then return more often? Would he bring Meghan? Would she want to come, given the fact she's so unpopular? Would King Charles meet his grandchildren again? Time will tell.
I suppose it shows that at the moment they can hide behind this security issue when it comes to why they're not returning to the UK. If they did suddenly get a better deal when it comes to security, perhaps there'll be more questions asked as to why Meghan isn't returning to the UK at the moment. But Richard, you picked up on a very important point there, the fact that Harry's lawyers have argued in court that Harry has felt singled out when it comes to downgrading of his security. We also have heard in his memoir Spare that he didn't get on with some of King Charles's or Prince William's courtiers, namely Sir Clive Alderton, for example, the King's private secretary, and that is why that is why perhaps he felt that Ravek was being unfair against him when they made that decision to downgrade his security. But by the fact that Prince Harry seems to continue to talk about his security arrangements, are you getting the sense that he wants to try and get the British public on side ahead of that decision by the Court of Appeal?
I can't help feeling that Harry and Meghan probably feel that they've lost, at least temporarily, lost the battle for support, public support in Britain, because their popularity ratings have been dreadfully low for a very long time, and it was such a contrast when they married, and also Harry's ratings before. We all know that. I think it's quite significant, however, the Newsweek, the most recent poll, has shown them more popular in the United States. I mean, again, in the United States, we know William was voted the world's most popular figure just ahead of President Zelensky last year in the Gallup poll. So this battle for popularity, I think they would like to increase their ratings. On the other hand, I don't think that most members of the public are following the step-by-step security battle, because it is somewhat obtuse. But they would sympathize with the simple fact that he feels under threat because of what happened to his mother. And on the specific point, if there was a poll, I think he would do rather well. But everyone remembers. And it's interesting on the special relationships. We've got the Sussexes supposedly having with people. Now we also have the Sussexes with a very special relationship, it seems, with CBS. And we had that CBS trail for the Columbia visit. And we had Meghan supposedly asked a question that she appeared not to want to answer. And we had another clip from the infamous Oprah interview. And whereas the members of the public wouldn't be probably following this, royal watchers have been very, very curious to know, would Meghan have known? And I rather feel she would. The question should be asked in that short trail, because after all, I mean, watching the Parents Network to help parents whose children have been harmed, sometimes dreadfully harmed, by online content. I mean, that's absolutely excellent. But to bring back memories of the Oprah interview and Meghan's unhappiness, certainly had mental health issues when she was a senior working royal, that took it to another level. And she talked about taking a hit. Some saw that as a veiled threat to the royal family. So it's a curious relationship with Oprah, with Gayle King, with Anderson Cooper, and then with this last interview with Jane Pauley.
Richard, do you feel that Meghan and Harry will stop now with public attacks on the royal family, and that just was a kind of thinly veiled threat, or there's more to come?
Well, I rather fear there's more to come. I would like to think that given the circumstances and given King Charles and the Princess of Wales's illnesses, that they would stop attacks. But again, we saw in Harry on ITV in the documentary about alleged tabloid excess. We saw the fact that he was discussing the rift with his family, and that a very, very different attitude had made the situation, the rift, worse. Indeed, it had been one of the causes of it. So it's impossible to say. I suspect that the sort of attacks that we saw in Oprah and with them a series, very, very different, though, in the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary. Then Spare and the interviews he gave around this, well, I mean, they were pretty brutal, and I wouldn't have thought, I mean, decency would forbid that they repeated those. On the other hand, there are always reports that come out, allegations that Meghan could write a memoir. Harry kept 400 pages apparently out of Spare, and it's possible some of them might emerge. They know every single thing, and this is one of the reasons that Columbia is important to them, because it does show that they're very high international profile. The fact the royal family or holiday wouldn't be conducting overseas tours at the moment is one thing, but the fact that it is very, very difficult for both the King and Queen, and also for the Prince and Princess of Wales, to do it, that does tend to indicate, with royals such as Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Princess Anne, they're told they're at a different level. Harry and Meghan know that they are being followed by huge international media, and that will, I suspect, give them a sort of an edge. I would hope that they would not criticize the royal family. If just consider for a minute that they decided to say something nice about the institution or the Commonwealth. I mean, that would be, insofar as I mentioned, security, that was, so to speak,
makes that different because they're no longer working royals is the fact that it's hard to see what level of input they or Archewell, who they're representing out there, can have had in the itinerary, because what knowledge do they or does Archewell have? What independent knowledge do they have, or have they been given on what is going on in the areas that they're visiting? So has the itinerary been entirely shaped by the Colombian government, and has that made them vulnerable to these conversations, these comments that have been made? So I think that's what we talk about when we talk about the difference between what's different about it when a working royal goes and when Harry and Meghan.
I've tried to speak to people or people connected with Colombia or in Colombia, and the gist I get is that this is a new government, a new left-wing government, and the Vice President has made this invite. I don't think Harry and Meghan, my latest information is they're not going to meet the president. There was talk about maybe a private kind of face-to-face meeting, but it's all on the strength of this vice president. People in Colombia are, I'm led to believe, happy to be corrected. They're concerned about the amount of money that's being spent. Colombia is not a rich country, you know, a lot of money's being spent on security, and also people are treating it as a royal tour. People are seeing it as it's the king's son, it's Princess Diana's son. You know, it's and these are the dangers, these are the pitfalls they might fall into, because it'll end up that it appears that they are representing the British royal family, and if things go wrong, then that's a real danger.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So Harry and Meghan, we have this ongoing conversation about them, don't we? They've stepped back. They're no longer officially representing the royal family, but Harry is still the king's son. When they go out there and say things and do things, it can look very similar, even though the underlying purpose is very different. But the optics of it on the surface can look very similar to when they were working royals. And that can be confusing for people, and people will say, well, what they're doing and what they're saying can still affect how the British royal family is seen. And so this is an ongoing conversation. But yeah, you're right to raise the point, which is a good point about who pays, because of course, when members of the royal family make overseas visits on behalf of the Foreign and Commonwealth, with the exception of Commonwealth realms, where King Charles is now also head of state, it's the British government who pays. They get the sovereign grant to pay for their travel, and the British government picks up the tab. So that's different now to Harry and Meghan going to Colombia. We don't know. They haven't said who is paying, but it seems more likely that it's Colombia who's paying than someone else. It's not clear, completely clear.
I didn't think you'd understand me.
What do you think Harry and Meghan are hoping to get out of this trip to Colombia?
Well, I think that what I don't really understand is how this fits into their long-term purpose and the long-term purpose of Archewell. I think in a short term, you can see that there's going to be a huge amount of attention on this tour, and probably they feel that they want to highlight these areas that they've said, women's empowerment and the military community, and it all sounds, like the intention is very positive. And I think they'll be hoping that they can shine a light on the things that they think are important. But as I said, if they haven't, how much independent control have they had over this programme, and how much knowledge do they have of already, or have they been given independently of the areas and the projects that they're visiting? I don't get the long-term thing. I don't get that. My personal feeling. Sorry, just to jump in, but I always felt that they work best when it's very clear what they're doing, and I think Invictus is the strongest example of that. People really understand what it is, what it stands for. It's an event as well as a community, and when they go out there and talk about Invictus, it feels very meaningful and very powerful, and it resonates with everyone. And I feel that they should be focusing, it's just my opinion, I'm not advising them, I don't think that would ever happen, that they should be identifying some other really key, really specific areas where they can focus on and do a similar thing, and people will really get, yes, they're doing this work on, for example, women's empowerment, they're doing it time and time again, and in these very specific ways, and everything feeds into that. This feels a little bit vaguer. This trip feels much more vague in terms of how it fits into their long-term plan. So what were you going to say about?
I was going to say, you've obviously seen Harry and Meghan in action on royal tours. How do you expect them to be received? So Harry, we talk about this kind of almost every week, that when he is on engagements, when he was a working royal, he was popular. People, reacted very well to him. Meghan didn't take to being a working royal. She didn't spend a lot of time, but she did do several tours like this, actual royal tours representing the UK government, not representing themselves and representing Archewell in a Latin American country. But you've seen them on the ground in, I think, was it South Africa? You must have seen them.
Yeah. So was this before you? Yeah. So it was Morocco. Was there when Meghan was pregnant, actually, with Archie? They went to Morocco on a very short visit, and then a much bigger visit where they took Archie to South Africa in 2019. And before that as well, obviously observed Harry for a long time. I always think Harry was so popular as a working royal for sort of maybe one of the reasons, almost the same reason that he can be unpopular now, is that he didn't hold back. He was always, in every situation, you felt that he was really being very authentic and very honest. And I think sometimes his PR people were like, okay, that's enough. But because if you were talking to him, he would just talk, and he would tell you what he thought. And I think that was what people liked about him. And obviously, he's been incredibly open since he left the royal family, and that has turned some people off. But he was, there's always been a real authenticity to him. And I think that he and Meghan, when they were doing trips together, it felt very powerful. You know, it did. It felt very powerful, and it felt like a really exciting time for the royal family to have this couple. We also talk about them as appealing to a new generation, which is interesting because they're pretty much the same age as William and Kate, but somehow it felt like they had this whole younger audience that they were appealing to. And I thought, you know, when they went to South Africa, when Meghan, right at the start of that trip, she made a speech about being a woman of colour, and it, you know, just felt really powerful. And that whole tour of South Africa felt so positive. And then at the very end, the story completely changed because they announced that they were suing the Mail on Sunday. And that was really, I think, the start of everything shifting. And it was the start of, I think, the floodgates opening and all of that stuff that had been simmering underneath the surface about how unhappy they were, about how angry they were with the media. That all kind of started from then on to really come out. And that was the point at which what the royal household has sort of contained a bit, the true strength of the fallouts and everything just kind of, it just all came out after that.
But in many ways, that's kind of when they took control, or they attempted to take control, and now they are in control of what they're doing by you know, taking Archwell and doing a tour of Colombia.
Yeah, I mean, I always said, you know, people would say about them, why are they going out and being public? Because they wanted privacy. You know, this is hypocritical. That was one of the accusations that was always thrown at them. And I always said, you know, they never said that they wanted to have a totally private life. They actually said they wanted a different kind of public life. They wanted to have control. They didn't want to have this thing of being taxpayer funded hanging over their heads that made them feel that they had obligations and had to agree to certain types of access from the media that they didn't want to have. And they wanted to set up their own thing and to have control. And they do have that now. I think the question is whether or not they can be as powerful as they were when they were in the royal family, because the weight that they had behind them of the institution and of the access to everything the British government has access to is obviously very different to what they have now. But they have achieved what they wanted to achieve.
Just finally on Colombia, we mentioned it earlier about the invite, and they could have. We don't know. They might have. I've heard rumours about invites to other places. But when we look at Colombia, and I've been to Colombia, it's a lovely country. The people are wonderful. But when you look at the politicians, you know, that are involved, just a quick list. And I don't want to insult Colombia in any way, but health minister is under investigation for allegedly using planes during a campaign that's belonged to a convicted drug runner. Foreign minister suspended alleged corruption. President's son charged with taking cash from drug traffickers. President's brother accused of seeking payments from a jailed drug dealer for judicial benefits. And the president himself faced allegations he cheated on his wife with a transgender TV host. They've got to be careful about what they're doing and who they're accepting invites. I mean,
we don't know.
Is North Korea going to invite them one day? I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But we don't know who they're going to meet, obviously. But I think, you know, I mean, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, I always struggle not to call her Countess of Essex, but yeah, Duchess of Edinburgh, she met Francia Marquez, the vice president, as well. But of course, she was there meeting her, representing Britain. And so it was very clear what Sophie represented, and it was not the interests of the Colombian government or the you know, she was clear that she was representing Britain at that time. And I think that's what the working royals have. It's that their message, their purpose, their representation is very clear when they go to other countries. And with Harry and Meghan, it's not quite clear what Archewell's stance on lots of things is, you know, in the same way.
Thank you till the end. I am Nur again from Gaza. The situation in Rafah is very
100%, totally agree with you. I'm seeing this as almost like when Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie would go abroad and do certain events and do speeches and try to do philanthropic kind of work. It feels like that they're just putting themselves into the celebrity sphere, but reminding everyone, hey, we are also royal as well.
But there's no doubt it will attract so much attention. And that's the thing, that it's like, what is the purpose of that attention, and how thought through is how that's being channeled, you know?
Yeah. Just quickly, I want to touch on one thing that they did announce. You know, they did a video recently, did a video interview in America. They talked about a new scheme called the Parents Network. I think this is about online bullying, and it's a serious issue, you know, in 2024. I mean, these are things that are affecting families all over the world. What do you think of this project? I mean, Meghan's complained or mentioned about the way that she felt she's been bullied in the past, or the problems they've both mentioned about issues about bullying and misbehaviour online. Do you think this is one of their projects that you could see succeeding?
I mean, I will say this is a subject that for me right now is so important for me, because I have a daughter who's just turned 11 and she's going to go to secondary school in September. And this smartphone thing, can I have a smartphone? Can I have social media? Is a question that parents get asked around this time. And I have been reading up a lot on the studies that are available about the dangers of social media and the information that has started to come through in the past few years since more children have had access to social media. And it is really terrifying how big an implication this can have on children. And I think this cause is absolutely brilliant. I think it's exactly the right kind of thing to be highlighting. And the Parents Network, it seems to be it's an organisation that parents who have had children whose lives have been affected. Some of them have lost their lives. Some of them have had terrible life-changing experience as a result of social media, can join as a support network. That's what it is. When you read the case studies, they're so moving, as they seem to all be US based. So I don't know if this organisation is solely US based or if it's international as well. But
it seems very small at the moment. I think they even spoke about that in the interview, that it did seem to be quite a small
I
setup.
think it's a really important cause for them to be championing. The question is, has it had the attention that it deserves? Will it get the ongoing attention that it deserves? Does that matter? I mean, sometimes it's not about the attention. Sometimes it's about what the project is doing. And you have a lot of these projects. Same with some of William and Kate's projects. They go along in the background and they're doing really good work, and it's not, everyone isn't necessarily talking about it all the time, but it's really important. So it could be that, but again, with them, I wonder whether it's something they could have made more impact with talking about as working royals. But I think it's really important. I think it's really important, and the fact they're talking about it, I think I think it's something to be really worried about, actually. And I guess maybe I'm at that point because of my daughter's age where I'm really thinking about it. And I don't know if everyone is, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I could see it. I welcome it. I could see it, succeeding. But they do often come up with many, many ideas. There always seems to be a new project and stuff like that every 6 months or so.
I don't know how you feel, but I kind of feel like sometimes it's hard to see, again, with the exception of Invictus, it's hard to see how everything fits together. And I think when you're a working role, you've got that umbrella of the institution of the monarchy. And so you can have all these scattered things, but they come together under that umbrella. And with Harry and Meghan, I feel that they would benefit from being more focused on certain things and really hammering that point home to the public. This is what they represent. I don't think they've quite done that yet.
Well, maybe this is worth talking about Josh Kettler. Their recent who's head of their organisation that left after 3 months. I mean, maybe the lack of direction or the lack of clarity could possibly be due to the huge turnover of staff that they have. I remember, I've written down here, I remember Mandana Dayani, do you remember she was the president of Archwell? She left in December 2022. And a statement, I saw this the other day, a statement that came from Archwell at the time said that her transition was mutually planned. The intent for the Duke and Duchess is to now take full lead of the company. I mean, I just wonder if there's kind of friction within Archwell, that they don't know what direction they're going. There's too many voices that are in for just a couple of months and then leaving, short period after. Maybe that leads to a lack of clarity and direction.
I think that can affect any organisation, definitely. I think they said that he had left by mutual agreement, but of course, he clearly didn't start that job intending to leave after 3 months. So it was obviously, it wasn't working for whatever reason from both sides. And I think it's really hard to find the right people, actually, for an organisation, because it's a question of people who maybe might sometimes tell you things you don't want to hear, but will steer you in a direction that it's important for you to go in. And that versus people who will be more cheerleadery for you, but maybe won't come up, and I think that's the balance. you know, I always think James Holt has worked for them for a very long time, and he obviously worked at the royal household as well. And I always really liked James. I always found him to be really good, and you know, he's still there. But yes, other people have definitely come and gone. And I think everyone benefits from having someone who will maybe question what they're doing and push them in a different direction, maybe. So I don't know whether they've had that, whether they're open to that. We don't know. This is the thing. We don't. You know, it's very difficult to know how things have gone on behind the scenes with them.
But we can look at the numbers and the amount of staff that when they were working at the palace that left, and then since they've been working at Archwell, they do have quite a high turnover. But you know.
Yeah, I think. Some people might say, Matt, just putting it out there, that you know, there's been a few private secretaries left on the Cambridge side as well over recent years, you know, and it's not always the case that there's a huge fallout, you know, it just isn't. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything related to...
Let's talk about back home.
Yeah.
In the UK. We've had some awful riots in the last couple of weeks. The far-right riots, I think they're being described as, and there was a bit of debate whether the king should come out and make some kind of statement, because it was huge for for about a week. Yeah. It was dominated the news, everything that was going on in the streets, all the issues, politicians were getting involved, lots of arrests. It's bringing up so many issues. But did we need the king to come out and make a statement, or are you happy with the way that he reacted? Because it was via a spokesman. Where
I'd be interested to know what you think on this as well. But I know that there were calls. I mean, the Republic said, you know, that he's the head of state. He should be uniting people. And there was an article, was it The Spectator, where someone said, you know, he should speak out. I felt like it was very clear that Buckingham Palace, I felt it was very clear that he wanted to be engaged, and I felt it was clear that Buckingham Palace wanted it to be known that he wanted to be engaged, and that he wanted to be kept up to date. But he didn't make any kind of statement, did he, while tensions were at their highest? And I guess you have to look at a number of things, you know, what advice is he getting from government on that? We don't know what advice he's getting from government, whether or not he is bound by that advice, whether or not he can make a decision autonomously on that kind of thing. Also, I don't think it's so much a question of being political, party political, in the sense that I don't think you would be accused of being party political. It's more to do with, this is a time of really heightened tensions. So is saying something, is there a risk of being accused of inflaming that in any capacity? Is it better to leave things to the police and the government in that time? You don't know what these considerations are. I mean, what were your sort of feelings on?
Well, my feeling was timing is everything. I mean, if you think back to COVID, there was a little bit of movement where it was like, well, is the late Queen, going to say anything? When's the Queen? And we were hearing, is she going to record a statement? Is she going to, you know, put something out? And it was the right time when she did her "We Will Meet Again" address. It just felt, we waited a bit of time. This feels like it's the right time. And I think with the king, I don't think the time was right. I mean, if it was still rumbling on and things were actually becoming totally chaotic, I don't think it was his place to come out and give some kind of unifying speech. I mean, I know he, in the comment that's put out, he was greatly encouraged by community spirit. I mean, these are the right things.
Yeah. So that's what I thought that he was glad perhaps to have the opportunity of the quite heartwarming anti-racist protests that were peacefully held in many places when we had thought that there might be lots of riots. And, you know, I live in Walthamstow actually. And so that was, you know, to see that huge kind of protest people in the streets, just and all peaceful. You know, after I'd been walking through Walthamstow earlier in the day, and there was so many police, and it felt really tense. You know, like it felt like what's going to happen in a few hours. We don't know what's going to happen, and all these police had come in anticipation that something might. And then in the end, it was this kind of really heartwarming, peaceful show of community spirit. And so for him, it felt like he was glad to be able to say something about that, because that was a really positive message. And then he could praise the police and he could praise the people who had shown that community spirit.
We both know that he's a huge supporter of interfaith dialogue. I mean, earlier this year I was at Buckingham Palace, and this was just after the situation in Gaza, and he had religious leaders from main religions all at Buckingham Palace having interfaith dialogue, and then he set up a kind of Windsor leadership group where I think it was like 13 or 15 religious leaders could meet and chat. I mean, even at the coronation.
Yeah, his coronation was, the first truly sort of multi-faith coronation that we've had in this country, and that was a real testament to his determination that that's what he wanted it to be. So yeah, he absolutely has credibility on having a long-term investment in those kinds of conversations. And
so behind the scenes, you would imagine the people that he speaks to, the religious leaders that he has contacts with, he would be, talking to them and working the best he can, but maybe wasn't the right time for some kind of big address at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, and also, like you say, that about the right time, and we don't see the head of state make addresses sort of left, right and centre. And it does need to be really considered maybe for a bit of time as to what the right thing to do is and when the right thing to do that kind of thing.
Be a good time to talk about royal relevance.
Okay,
Obviously, the King was not involved or could have been involved in, serious news issue of that week. But there's been some recent polling that I think we want to talk about into the popularity of the British royal family. So we've got some figures here from recent polls. The recent polling shows that 47% of 18 to 24-year-olds have a negative view of the royal family compared to 39% positive. So that, are young people not fully engaged with the royal family these days? By contrast, 77% of older people has a positive view of the royal family. Is it the case that the age is simply a factor here, or is the royal family not coming across as relevant to many younger people?
I mean, in some ways it's not surprising, because I think polling has long shown that older people favour the monarchy over younger people. So the question is, does that trend just carry on? And when those 18 to 24, 25-year-olds get older, they then become part of the 77% when they're 65 plus. Is that what happens? Or is it the case that now the generation who are 18 to 24 will continue to have those more critical views of the monarchy? And I think there is a vulnerability that could happen, because I think Queen Elizabeth dying changed a lot. It was an end of an era when she died, and she was much, much more popular than King Charles is as an individual. There's no getting away from that. He's far lower than her in terms of popularity.
Well, I've got some numbers on that, if you like.
Yeah,
I've got the late Queen currently has an 84% positive view, while King Charles is just 56%.
Yeah, and she was always that high throughout her lifetime as well, and so I don't see that changing, really. And in many ways, you could say, if you look back to 30 years ago, when Charles was 20, 25, 30 years ago, when Charles, Prince of Wales, was very unpopular, and when Camilla was really reviled, it's actually fantastic for him that he has got the polling that he has, and that she has been accepted in the way that she has as Queen. That is something that I think lots of people would have not believed 20 years ago that would have happened, and there would have been no pushback on that. So it's sort of relative in that sense. But the monarchy has been around for centuries, obviously, but throughout Queen Elizabeth's reign, there was perhaps more change than we ever saw in the centuries and in the reigns before that. And, a lot of change in attitudes towards deference, towards hierarchy occurred throughout her time as Queen. And there is always that question of, does it make sense to have hereditary head of state, hereditary privilege in a modern democracy, in a society that considers itself to be a meritocracy? And that is, one of the reasons why a lot of other countries don't have it. There's always that question. And so I think it does come down to the popularity of the individuals. And in some cases, it probably comes down to, what the alternatives are and whether they're even actually proposed. And I think what we're seeing now is, I don't think we see as much active excitement about Charles as we did about Queen Elizabeth, or active kind of outward love and respect that she commanded. But we're not seeing people who are really actively disliking him. I'm not getting the mood out there, or the polling isn't really showing that he is a figure who people don't want. I say there's maybe more apathetic sort of mood.
Well, we've had a lot of huge events. I mean, maybe people just want to maybe just turn away from the royal family a little bit. But when I see the king out and about, people are out to see the king. They're not specifically out to see Charles like you would with the late Queen. You go, well, it's the Queen. They're often there for the position. You know, the fact that he is the man who is the king.
And he does have very different status, obviously, to the status that he had. And I found it kind of interesting to see how, there was all of that talk before he became king, and they actually moved to quell some of those rumours by him doing interviews saying things like he's not going to be a meddling monarch, and, how he sees the role as different. But there was all of that talk around what kind of king will he be? Will he be an activist king? Will he campaign? And none of that has materialised. He has moved very much into that role that Queen Elizabeth had, of being incredibly neutral, not speaking out on things. There's lots of things that he hasn't done since he's become king that I think we would have seen him do if he was still Prince of Wales, in terms of climate change, the types of engagements he has, for example. And he seems to be making it very clear that absolutely that role of sovereign and all of those things that involves is what he sees as paramount.
People say, don't bite off more than you can chew, but I'm always craving for new challenges. Good thing that...
And conversely, like, William has almost kind of stepped into the role that he had. I feel like William has been very kind of, launching projects in a way that maybe we would associate with Charles. I know he did Earthshot before he became Prince of Wales, but Homewards as well, really kind of sitting down and going, what can we do on these issues? How can we change things? How can we think differently? How can we move forward in a, that sort of way?
Well, the king was very clear when he did his accession speech, like 2 days after or the day after his mother died, and he said, I can no longer do or get involved in certain issues and projects and charities and stuff like that I could when I was Prince of Wales. But now William has that freedom, as you rightly pointed out, to say homelessness is going to be something that he's going to be fighting for, or calling for years. But William now has that freedom to really get stuck into stuff that maybe...
And he has more at his disposal. So he has the Duchy of Cornwall now, which he didn't have. He has the money from the Duchy of Cornwall, which is a lot of money. Exactly. I mean, that's the other thing. The royal family is costing the British public more than they ever have done now, in recent history anyway, this uplift in the sovereign grant. And the duchies, I think for me, there is definitely a question as to what extent the funding can go on indefinitely without some kind of overhaul, because those duchies were set up a very, very long time ago, and is there an argument for moving towards a more streamlined system with just that sovereign grant, that one method of funding? I think it'll be unraveling the duchies is the thing, because they've got a complex structure, and there are people within the framework who obviously rely on that framework being there. So that's the question. But I do wonder that. And this other thing, we talk about slimmed down monarchy, and the royal family has become accidentally slimmed down with Andrew leaving and Harry and Meghan leaving, and people have often talked about the slimmed down monarchy like it's some kind of virtue, slimmed down monarchy. But to me, I've always felt it's kind of meaningless if you're not slimming down the funding, because you're just saying, well, there's fewer people doing stuff, but we're not taking less money. So unless you're talking about overhauling the funding, what are you really slimming down in terms of how is that benefiting the public and the public purse? So I think there's that conversation that I do think will come back in the future,
Well, the funding issue, the only reason I would question the funding issue is because every year when we have to do the reports on the royal family's finances, it is a nightmare day having to go through.
Do you find it? It's my favourite day.
I know you enjoy it. I absolutely
I just like the numbers,
looking through those figures. But I genuinely think they're good value for money. I mean, you think the billions that the government wastes on certain stuff, over the years, that more and more reports come out, the amount of wastage that happens through government. I think the money we actually that comes from us to support the royal family and the benefits that we get back, and we actually have a benevolent leader that doesn't abuse the system for his own gain, like you often get presidents in other countries. I mean, we could start naming them, but I actually support the fact that the royal family, and I particularly support the fact that I don't question too much about their funding because I think we get great value for money. But talking about relevance, whether the royal family can remain relevant to young people, Prince William's beard.
Yeah.
Now that was relevant on social media this week.
Yeah,
wasn't
it's
it?
so funny. I just thought that was so funny because obviously, Kate has been of such huge interest recently, and everything she's done has attracted huge amounts of attention. So for me, I was thinking, well, she's appeared in this video and that's going to be the thing that people are interested in, people are talking about, because we haven't seen her anywhere near as much as we normally would. And then suddenly to see that everyone was actually talking about William's beard, and that's what everyone wanted to talk about.
Well, Kensington Palace were the same as well, just between me and you. Just between me and
everyone.
You.
But
when they recorded it, they thought, oh, it'll be about Snoop Dogg, it'll be about David Beckham. They were quite surprised it was all about Prince William's beard. I mean, we've seen him with beards before, but this is a summer beard. So this is, I understand that we won't see him in engagements in September with a fully grown beard. This is just, I'm on holiday, I'm relaxed, I'm just going to put my feet up and let the beard grow out.
A summer beard, okay. I mean, yes, I had thought we probably won't see him back in September with a beard, but there's been this kind of conversation over the years, I remember, about should royals, have beards. I think it was more to do with when Harry was in the military, there was that question raised, but it's, the kings with beards is very much a thing throughout history, So if he did decide to have a beard, then that would be very much in keeping with, tradition. If we look at sort of King George V and Edward VII and way back as well, obviously.
Of course, famously, Harry, allegedly in Spare, he wrote that William was livid that he was able to have a beard in his military uniform.
Yes, so that was the military side, not the royal side, that conversation came up in the context of. I mean, I'm sure that Harry believed that to be the case, but yeah.
Can I ask, was it hot or not, his beard?
I'm absolutely not answering that.
Did he suit the beard?
Not thinking in those terms in any way. I mean, no, I don't. I know I'm not answering is what I'm saying. I have no idea.
Fine.
What do you think?
I thought you suited it. I thought you carried it off quite well. But it is that kind of summer beard where you're on holiday, you're not going to be on TV, no one's going to see you in the office.
Except you are then going to be on TV.
And then all of a sudden, someone asks you to record something to put on social media, and you're in holiday mode. You've left, you haven't shaved, you haven't got rid of your beard. But
you could shave. So he obviously made a choice that he was happy to be seen in his beard. So.
And it broke the internet for a couple of hours. Right, we have some quick fire questions at the end of this chat, if you are ready and prepared.
I don't know if I am, but okay.
Okay, let's get started. Take a deep breath. We're in the middle of August now, so which member of the royal family would you most like to join you on a summer holiday?
So I would say, if I can have a no longer living, I would say 100% Princess Margaret, and it would be in Mystique. I would be joining her in Mystique.
That'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be a party. And current?
Oh, living. I don't know, maybe
Mike Tyndall, a weekend. I'd go with Mike Tyndall for a city break to Barcelona or something.
Well, then I'd go with Zara. Me and Zara would have a girly weekend, yeah. Okay,
awesome. Excluding, obviously, Princess Anne and Zara, who have competed, which member of the royal family could best represent Team GB at the Olympics?
I 100% think Kate. I think I would say either sailing or swimming.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. You see, I always knew she was sporty, but I don't think I realised how much swimming was a thing for her. She spoke about it in an interview recently about how she likes to do cold water swimming, and I'd always known she did running. That was the thing for her. So I found that really interesting because I love swimming as well. But I think she's very sporty, and I think she could absolutely do it.
You should make this happen. Or hockey. I seem to remember.
Yeah, she was always in the hockey team. Yeah.
Okay. When she always gets involved every time there is a sporting event with an engagement, whether it's rugby. I've seen her being picked up when she was at Twickenham,
tennis.
And she was getting involved in tennis with Emma Raducanu.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. She could medal.
I totally think so. Yeah.
We did touch on this earlier, and I struggled to get an answer from you, so I'll try it this way. Whose beard is better, Prince Harry or Prince William?
Oh, I have no idea, no thoughts. Also, they were totally different times as well, weren't they? Does Harry have one now? No.
Yeah, he has one now.
Oh, right. Okay. He does. You're right. No, I don't know. I don't have any preference.
A more serious question now. What do you think will be the biggest crisis facing the royal family in the next 10 years?
I just think it's going to be something completely unexpected, because all of the past ones have been. I think when I think back to when I started covering the royals, which was like 2010, when William and Kate got engaged, and it was just celebration, celebration after celebration of weddings, babies, Queen Diamond Jubilee, longest reigning monarch, 90th birthday, all of those things. And then it completely changed. The story completely changed, and the focus was on Andrew, and the focus was on Harry and Meghan and how unhappy they were. And I mean, the Andrew thing had been rumbling along for a long time, yes, but I don't think I would have seen then that it would have come to the head that it did many years later, and he's had to step down. And same with Harry and Meghan. I would never have seen that coming, but when they became engaged. And it was just, when Harry would say sort of things, for example, when they issued that statement at the end of their South Africa tour, that was a huge deal, because they were really speaking in really strong terms about how they felt about things. And at the time, that was big, because we hadn't heard this insight. And then when you look now at how much insight we've had into everything, and the books there, I would never, ever have predicted that, ever. So I think, and COVID obviously totally unpredictable as well. So I just think it will be something unpredictable.
We've got to be prepared for, as royal journalists, you've got to be prepared for anything. I mean, this year, we thought this year would be this big year of peace, of travel, we have foreign tours, and it'd be nice for, a calm year. And then we had the King
Totally
and the Princess of Wales come up,
at the start of this year, again, another, exactly. It was completely out of the blue. No one was expecting to get either of those announcements. So.
Some people think royal journalists have an easy job. We really don't. You've got to be prepared for absolutely everything. Who knows what's going to happen next 10 years? Yeah. And finally, if you could ask any member of the royal family any question and they have to respond truthfully, who would you ask and what would the question be?
And that's really hard. I probably